This is the BBC.
This podcast is supported by advertising outside the UK.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello everyone. No cheerful soul limbo music today, I'm afraid, because this is a very sad morning. We confirm the final test between England and India has been called off, essentially because the Indian team is concerned about a possible rise in the number of COVID cases in the camp, and so they can't put out a team. The result is yet to be decided. The initial statement reported that the match had been forfeited, actually, but that's now been retracted and will be decided upon by the ICC. Before we do anything else, let me bring a statement here. This is all that we've had. It's a very short statement. And it reads, following ongoing conversations with the BCCI, the ECB can confirm that the fifth LV insurance test between England and India, due to start today at Emirates Old Trafford, will be cancelled. Due to fears of a further increase in the number of COVID cases inside the camp, India are regrettably unable to field a team. We send our sincere apologies to fans and partners for this news, which we know will cause immense disappointment and inconvenience to many. And further information will be shared in due course, is how that reads. So, where are we? We're at the Oval, of course, for the last test match. We knew that 3 Indian coaches, including the head coach, Ravi Shastri, all tested positive for COVID-19. They were not able to travel up here to Manchester. They've actually stayed back in their hotels in London. And then on Wednesday, the reserve physio also tested positive for COVID, and of course the fear was that he'd been treating a number of the players, not least Rohit Sharma, Cheteshwar Pujara, who were injured in the course of that match at the Oval. But a further round of tests proved that the players were all negative, although the physio did test positive. So that was the lack of confidence, really, that we're hearing about from the Indians about the tests that they have taken. So we've got Michael Vaughan alongside me. I've got Vic Marks there as well. It's a desperately sad scene. When walking to the ground today, it's just incredibly hollow, really. And you walk through and you consider all the ramifications of a match being called off. You think about, well, the players, you think about the administrators, you think about the fans, of course, those who have bought tickets. And we saw them still loitering around outside the gates. Some have been allowed in. There are some sitting on the hotel balconies there looking a bit confused. You wonder when they first heard about this news and so on. You walk in, you see all the concession stands set up, barrels and barrels of beer, and all the fast food places, again, just ready to go. And it's rather a confused sort of atmosphere about it all. What's going to happen to all of that? And it's just a really weird feeling. Got the ground staff out there, arms folded, sort of loitering around, really, looking at the pitch, which is covered. And it just feels utterly empty, doesn't it, Michael? Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. It's so sad. I always start with the fans. Sport is nothing without the fans, and to see, many outside the ground, many that would have travelled. I bumped into one gentleman who travelled down from Edinburgh. Feel desperately sorry for the supporters that won't see today's play, won't see the test match. Desperately disappointed for the club, Lancashire County Cricket Club. The pandemic's hit them hard. Last year it was an awful time for them. They're an events company. If you look at the operation here at Old Trafford, and these next few days were desperate for their coffers. For the Test series, it's been magnificent. The cricket has been brilliant to see. So we're missing the finale of what could be a great Test match. I do look at these times and it's difficult. It's hard, and it's hard to point the finger at players because of what they've gone through in the last year and a half. But I honestly, India have let English cricket down. I honestly feel that to pull out at the last 12 o'clock last night, to pull out. How's this not been done before? All the players have been tested negative. Of course, they've been around a physio, and I think that is the key in this, that clearly that physio would have touched many of them over the last few days. So I have a little bit of sympathy for that.
They did all test negative.
Yeah, absolutely. I go back to last year, December, England did a similar thing to South Africa.
Yep.
So, England kind of set the precedent for this kind of thing. There was no vaccinations back then, though. But I do feel, I felt at the time that English cricket let South African cricket down last December, and then Australia won't tour South Africa on the back of what England did. So there's ramifications, and there's kind of a snowball effect that happened from their decision. So England have got bigger muscles than South Africa. They flexed them back then. I believe that India have flexed their muscles. They've got the IPL starting in a week or so's time. Players will be absolutely petrified of picking up the virus, having to quarantine and miss out on IPL games. The BCCI would have be scared to death that the Indian players wouldn't be able to get over and play in the IPL. It's a £300 million tournament for the BCCI. This, I believe, will cost the ECB around 20 to 30 million. So what goes from here, the fact that the forfeit, which was read out early this morning, now has kind of been manoeuvred that that's not the case. They haven't forfeited the match. This will be a long legal process, I guess, going forward to decide on where the cost of this week will lay. And I do think, I just feel that I might be strong in this, and I'm sure I'll get. I honestly feel Indian cricket have let the English game down to pull out at the last minute. There's 26 players in the squad, or 25 players. I'm pretty sure 11 could have been played today.
It did seem last night as if everything's going to go ahead, doesn't it? I mean, you went to bed and thought, well, that's fine, there's a test match tomorrow. They're all tested negative, and all the vibes were there, but there was a statement from the ECB, it all looked to be going ahead, but there's nothing from the BCCI at the time. But let me just read this statement from Lancashire Cricket anyway. Lancashire Cricket has issued the below statement following on from the ECB's announcement this morning, cancelling the final test match. Daniel Gidney, he's the chief executive, said, as a club, we're absolutely devastated about the late cancellation of the test match. We'd like to unreservedly apologise to ticket holders and all those who have or are due to travel to Old Trafford. A full refund will be issued, but we appreciate for many supporters attending this test match, it's more than just the monetary worth. After the last 18 months of all experience through the pandemic, it's a fixture cricket fans in the northwest have looked forward to for the best part of 18 months. You can't underestimate the work that goes into preparing for a 5-day test match. I'd like to thank all our supporters, guests, suppliers, partners and all those involved for their continued support. I'd also like to thank all the amazing staff who work at Old Trafford who've worked tirelessly to prepare the ground for this test match. We have an incredibly loyal and talented group of people who've worked very long hours in the run-up to this game. We're working closely with the ECB on the next steps and the finer detail that will follow as a consequence of this cancellation. The club will contact ticket and hospitality holders. That's an important aspect. You, according to the statement, you will be contacted. If you have a ticket, you will be contacted by the club, who'd like to again express its sincere apologies for all the inconvenience and disruption caused to all involved. It's a sad statement and reflects, I think, the mood that everyone feels here this morning. You've got us tuning in and expecting to hear us, I'll be doing the toss now, interviewing Joe Root and Virat Kohli, but it's not going to happen. The series is over. This match has been, cancelled at the moment. I think is probably the most accurate way to describe what's happened. Basically, the Indians have said they couldn't put a team out, and that is going to be that. Let's bring in Deep Das Gupta. Hello, Deep. You're on your way to the IPL shortly, aren't you? So you're not actually with us in person, but I wonder how surprised you are by this news.
I am surprised because still last night the news that I heard was, there would be a test match will go on. And it is quite disappointing, as Michael mentioned. About it's end of the day, it's about the supporters, about the fans, about all the stakeholders. And I think one of the biggest stakeholders are the fans who pay so much of money to come to the ground. So it is disappointing for sure. But what I also know is, from a player's perspective, they're all in isolation. They've all locked themselves up, and some of them, and most of them rather, are here with their families. Now, one of the biggest concern for them is they're with kids as well. So what if both the parents are tested positive? For example, Yogesh Parmar, the physio who's recently tested positive, he's double vaccinated. Even he's tested now positive. So I think a lot of these players who have their kids over as well are extremely petrified with what has been happening.
That's an interesting point you make about all of that. And I wonder, I'll also toss something else your way, Deep. I mean, Ravi Shastri, who's very influential, very used to life over here after all, and so on. I mean, he's not here, head coach. He's in London because he tested positive. I just wonder, had he been here with his sort of guidance and experience and general sort of common sense, whether that might have been different.
I doubt, because I know for a fact that there's been a lot of chat that's been happening since morning between the players, the BCCI and the ECB. So it was. This is I know this is last moment because there was a lot of effort being put in both from BCCI and ECB's end to make sure we have a test match here. But I guess that didn't happen, because I know for a fact till 9:30 this morning, I think 9:30ish or whatever, they were all speaking to each other if there is any way possible or to continue with the test match.
Just seeing here on a screen that's being reported, I don't know where, that the BCCI have offered to reschedule the 5th test match, so that both the boards will work towards finding a window to reschedule this test. Well, they are due to come over next summer, I think, aren't they, to play a T20 series. I mean, whether that can be put into an already packed... I don't talk about schedules this summer, but if they can put the one-off test match into that, well, that would be something. Let's bring in Victor. More or less unprecedented, I think, this, Victor. I mean, you've seen a few games, as I have, that have been cancelled or abandoned, but I can't think of one before a ball was bowled under these sort of circumstances.
Not quite like this. No. There is that same feeling that Michael was talking about, numb sort of disappointment, really. The series was building up into a great climax. We've been in the Caribbean and we'd seen a 10-ball test match when the outfield was like a sandpit.
Yes.
We've seen another one in Jamaica which lasted a little bit longer when the ball was flying around Mark Butcher's ears briefly and Alex Stewart's and so forth.
I think Butcher's very briefly, weren't they?
Yeah, one ball, I think. And then there is that precedent, not very close precedent, but the 2006 game at the Oval, where the game initially was forfeited when Pakistan didn't take the field after tea, I think on the Saturday or the Sunday. But nothing quite like this, but we are in strange times.
And that one actually went back, reverted to being forfeited, actually, which, if you look at it accurately, was the right...
Well, it was amazing, because it was...
They didn't come out to
initially, it was the umpires and the match referees said Pakistan have forfeited the game, England have won. Within a couple of years, that had been retracted, and then a year after that, they reverted to an England win. So I don't know how the bookmakers are going to sort that one out, or how they did sort that out. I mean, that'll be an issue even for this game.
Of course
it's
it will.
Another side issue.
Right, it's a BCCI statement now. This is the first word that we've heard from them on the subject. The Board of Control for Cricket in India, BCCI, along with the ECB, have jointly decided to call off the 5th test match. You know the politics at play here, can't you? The first statement we had was it had been forfeited. Now this one says it's been jointly decided to call off the 5th test starting at Manchester. The BCCI and the ECB held several rounds of discussion to find a way to play. However, the outbreak of COVID-19 in the Indian team contingent forced the decision of calling off the Old Trafford test match. In lieu of the strong relationship between BCCI and ECB, the BCCI has offered to ECB a rescheduling of the cancelled test match, and both the boards will work towards finding a window to reschedule it. The BCCI has always maintained that the safety and well-being of the players is of paramount importance, and there will be no compromise on that aspect. That's what the BCCI has to say. But you can see the different...
the spin doctors are working hard.
Yes, routes in which it's being taken.
Let's be honest, this wasn't a joint decision. Let's put that straight away to bed.
I mean, England obviously wanted to play, but but there are millions of pounds at stake and everything else. And I mean, social media, that goes on there, but this will be round about for decades about who won that series. Virat Kohli, I mean, this is what, does it surprise you? I mean, Virat Kohli had so much pinned on this series. His legacy, his whole captaincy legacy depended on winning this series. I mean, all of that.
Well, does it depend on a law court now? As to
exactly.
Who's what? I mean, it'd be fatally ridiculous to waste lawyers' money or our people's money on lawyers to decide what's the outcome of this series. They'll probably have to do it.
Yeah. Ali, go on. You've been pouring through archive and records and regulations and stuff.
Well, just trying to figure out, Agaz, of what Vic is saying about how the result could be determined, because, that BCCI statement saying, yes, they're offering to reschedule the match, and their use of terminology saying, yes, we've decided to call it off. That still gives no indication.
Jointly call it off is what it
says.
That's the key word,
I
think.
from the BCCI, yes. Whether that's been signed off by the ECB, whether they would agree to that, remains to be seen. But so if... Ordinarily, Vic was referring back to that 2006 test match at the Oval. If a team refuses to play, that is a forfeiture, and the match referee determines that, and therefore the match is awarded to the other side. And on the face of it, you could look at this situation and say, well, there were no positive cases amongst the Indian team, therefore a team was fit to take the field, it's a forfeiture. However, the ICC rules state that for tests affected by COVID, a match can be cancelled rather than forfeited if there is a significant impact of COVID-19. So if
on the team, or is that just full stop?
That doesn't specify.
Right. Okay.
So I think there's a lot of grey area.
Yeah, of
so
course.
if there's no discussion, or if another test match doesn't get rearranged and we're left with this situation as is, then the argument would seem to be that the ECB believe that the test is forfeited. The BCCI would argue that COVID has had a significant impact and therefore it should not be a forfeiture, it should be a cancellation. Now, if no agreement can be made, then it seems to be that it can go through to the ICC's Disputes Resolution Committee, which doesn't seem like a terribly quick solution.
And not
to
a good place to be either.
But that is the recourse that they could go to if they can't reach a real agreement.
I mean, they've got to. It's too important for BCCI and the ECB to fall out. I mean, they've got to maintain some sort of relations.
No one falls out with India if they could help it nowadays. But the distinction between the difference between the situation before the Oval Test match and this Test match, I mean, I'm just trying to get my head around how different is it, a physio as opposed to Ravi as the team director and his two coaches? I mean, is that a significant difference? I don't know.
Victor, if you go back to the start of the summer, the Indian team, there was report they didn't want to play this Test match anyway. It was too close to the IPL. The difference in the Oval to Old Trafford is completely that the IPL starts next week, and these players are absolutely petrified of getting COVID, having to isolate and missing out on the IPL. It's all about the IPL money. India have got the biggest muscles in the world of cricket, and it's all about the actual monetary side of what they bring and what they deliver. The ECB, they will not want to fall out with the BCCI. The World Game doesn't want to fall out with the Indian Cricket Board. They are the powerhouse. But somewhere, somehow, I do believe that some other muscles have to start to be flexed because they just control the game. And it's things like this that hit home that, wait a minute, they seem to be able to just do whatever they want at any time, and everyone else has to accept it. I know we're in a very strange a period of our lives, but I do think, and it's been for a long, long time, that the BCCI and the Indian cricket team generally be able to act as exactly how they want, when they want, and how they want.
Let's talk about the impact of these bubbles, though, because we had one to a minor extent last year. Deep, I mean, crikey, you've spent some time, and presumably you've got another one to come now, have you? When you go into Dubai,
yes,
you've got to go and seal yourself away. I mean, just describe what it is like to be in that sort of environment.
Obviously, I mean, it's self kind of defines itself. You are restricted to your room, to the ground, to a few places inside the hotel, maybe one of the restaurants, maybe where you have breakfast and food. So yeah, I mean, it's a you just kind of a small area that you can go to. For example, even to the ground. You're not allowed to obviously meet the players. You're not allowed to kind of get onto the ground unless you really have to, for example, a pitch report or something. And that too would be a couple of hours before the players would take the field or something. So, for example, if it's an 11 o'clock start, your pitch report and everything has to be around 9 in the morning. So in India, when the test series was on, it was 9 a.m. starts, and we would do the pitch report at 7:15 a.m. in the morning. Just to make sure that nobody's there. So when the groundsmen are there, nobody else is there. So there are these small groups as well. So the groundsmen and the curators are part of one bubble. The commentators are part of one. The players are part of one. So they don't interact with each other. So you try and remain in the bubble as much as possible. And just a quick one. I know, I mean, it's disappointing, and obviously anger is one of the emotions which is quite predominant right now at whatever's happening. But it's a little unfair, I think, what Michael mentioned about BCCI doing whatever they want. I think end of the day, they do realize that it's also important that the game goes on. And I can assure you, what I've heard is BCCI tried their utmost best to convince everyone involved to carry on with the game. So, I think it's a little unfair to be to kind of. I know. I mean, at times BCCI can be a favorite whipping boy, and the IPL especially can be the favorite whipping boy of a lot of people. Anything that goes wrong in the world, blame it on the IPL. It's same within India. I mean, I'm not just saying here. I mean, even in India, if there is a drought, that is IPL's fault. If there is a famine, there is an IPL's fault. So IPL ends up being the favorite whipping boy.
Yeah. Tell us about Virat Kohli. I mean, it's floated there the thought that, how's he going to feel, I wonder? Because you've been working with us these last few weeks. You know how driven he's been to really want this series, hasn't he? I mean, I wonder how he'll be feeling today.
Obviously disappointed, and one of the players who were didn't want to take a chance because he's got his really young daughter with him, obviously wife and daughter with him. But as you mentioned, I think this test match will be played next summer when India is over anyways for T20 and ODI. I think this test match will be clubbed along with that white ball series, is how I see it.
You're listening to the TMS podcast from BBC Radio 5 Live.
I'm going to speak to Tom Harrison in a second. Tom, dear me, where do we start? I think you've had a bit of a night.
Yeah, long night. Just really sad, isn't it, actually? I think that's the sort of enduring sentiment around the ground, and I'm sure for the many thousands of people who were due to come and watch this compelling end to an amazing test series that we've had, it is just a very, very sad day.
Yeah, it just all seemed to be positive yesterday. I mean, the tests for the Indian players came back negative and so on. So, I mean, were you imagining that the game would go ahead yesterday?
Yeah, I was. And I mean, the bottom line is that you can't be flippant or light-hearted about issues with mental health. And that is what this is about. And through this pandemic, we've seen this manifest itself in different ways. This Indian cricket team have been an unbelievable, exemplary touring team for India as great ambassadors for their country. They've been wonderful tourists that have enthralled crowds all the way around the country this year. But they've been here for a long time, and I think that the other thing just to bear in mind is playing at this level week after week is difficult, and when you are doing it in the environment that we're all living in, even if it feels like we're kind of emerging from the pandemic in this country, for the players, life is different. It's not a biosecure environment, but there are standards in place that make it difficult to live life normally, and I think that just builds over time. And when it creeps into an environment, it can accelerate very quickly. We've seen that ourselves, actually, in the past. So huge sympathy with players on both sides, and massive sympathy with fans who aren't going to get to see what we hope would be the end of this summer.
Well, no, and walking in, I'll describe it as feeling hollow and empty, and it does. And all those concessions set up around the back here, all ready to go. I mean, what's your message to them?
Well, my message is we're really sorry. I actually walked past. It was a forlorn-looking Lanky the giraffe on the way into the ground with his head slumped, and it was kind of an exact kind of, I think, perfect description of how I feel about this, and how fans will feel across the country. That it's just, we were looking forward to this culmination of this Test series. It isn't going to happen. No. Hopefully, we can get it on at some other time, but clearly, it's not going to be the same as having a fifth Test after 4 brilliant matches. People are bound to point the finger at the IPL, which is looming large, of course. From the BCCI's interest in that, but also the Indian players' interest in the IPL. What's your thoughts on or view on that? I think that's unfair. Actually, I think it's really unfair. I think this is I think the BCCI and this Indian cricket team and their captain all want to make their mark in Test cricket, and that is how they judge themselves, is how they perform in Test cricket, like our players. And like our fans. So I don't think that is something that needs to worry people who feel there may be an agenda at hand here. It just isn't the case. And I think, I was on the phone all night to our colleagues in India and some of them in Dubai to find different ways of getting this test match played, to delay it by a day, to delay it by 2 days, to give comfort that we can do more testing in this environment. As you rightly pointed out, we haven't had a positive test in the recent couple of rounds. So, but I think once those fears creep in, they can be very hard to shift. And so it's turned out to be in this case. So just no winners in this one, Angus.
No, absolutely. But it sounds as if we're saying as if the BCCI actually were trying hard to get this game on as well. But in fact, the players got into their minds that they'd had enough.
100% they were. I mean, this is a strong relationship that between the ECB and the BCCI. They have, throughout this series, but actually throughout the last few years, we've been working incredibly closely together to try and help build Test cricket, to build cricket around the world, not just in our own territories. And it's a very close relationship, and those relationships get tested at times like this. But we will definitely come through this, probably even stronger than we went in. We have to understand that when it comes to matters, as I said earlier, matters of mental health, listening to players, listening to what they're telling us, and it's not just in this case, but it's to do with schedule, it's to do with the ongoing commitments and obligations that we ask players to fulfil. Administrators have to keep listening and make sure that we're taking action against putting too much pressure on players to continually fulfil obligations.
And does this shine a spotlight on the Ashes as well? I mean, there's all those negotiations going on where we understand with you and Cricket Australia and so on, but does this other strength in your hand is the wrong way to say it, but I mean, does this illustrate the point that no doubt you and the England players are making?
Yes, and I think it's understood by Cricket Australia as well. Those conversations will keep going, and again, it's there's nothing more important than the health and well-being of our players. Now, it's funny when you pull a hamstring or a calf muscle, everyone understands you're going to be sitting on the sidelines for a while, but I think we're only just starting to understand the situation with respect to mental health, but it's exactly the same. And players playing at this level of the game need to be as mentally fit as they are physically fit in order to do what fans expect them to do, which is pretty much win every game they play. Yeah. And that's what international cricketers are put through these days.
The question of the result, I don't know how important it is in the short term, but I mean, the statement about it being forfeited, which was retracted, because it is very sensitive, all this too, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure as far as insurance and so on is concerned, it's sensitive, but to talk about teams forfeiting and so on, I mean, it's quite well, as you know, with the Pakistan incident in 2006, I mean, it also comes with a bit of not a stigma, but it's very sensitive, isn't it? So, I mean, where are we with the outcome of this game?
Well, it's not one for today, actually, as you rightly pointed out. I think today is all about making sure that we have fronted this in terms of what has happened, why it's happened, what the situation is with respect to the immediate term. Thoughts will turn to that soon, and obviously that's not a decision for us, it's a decision for ICC to think about in the context of the World Test Championship. Look, and no one's trying to score points here, if you pardon the pun. It's about making the right decisions given the context of what's taken place. And to be fair to each side, that's all we're asking for, and that's that process will take place over the coming weeks. But it's not something that concerns us. Unduly, we just expect that the people that are in place to make those decisions Yeah.
I mean, of all the games England have been involved in over the last year or so, of course, England withdrew from South Africa. I mean, with that, presumably, given that we've been on both sides of that now, I mean, you could appreciate the Indian view perhaps, but more intently because you were in it before Christmas.
Exactly right, and Sri Lanka before that when we. And each is different in its own way. But what you do understand is that there is the topic of touring within the context of a pandemic over time. It does build up. It's a kind of it exacerbates over time, and that wear on your mental health and your well-being and your ability to continue to perform. What people, I think, need to try and understand is when you're playing international cricket, on the field is a very anxiety-inducing environment, clearly, and very few people are at the level to be able to cope with that. And actually what the bubble environment, or indeed the managed living environment off the field is also anxiety-inducing. And people, Agus, you'll know this because you've spent enough time in these bubbles to know the impact it has on you or on your colleagues who aren't then going out and performing as you once did, on the international stage. So there is no let-up. It's you have no opportunity to decompress. And that's why when you take into account that this Indian cricket team have been here since before the World Test Championship in the beginning of June, it's an extraordinarily long period of time, no matter how, how easy we've tried to make it for to live a normal life. The fact of the matter is, it isn't a normal life, and I think over time that pressure builds up, and it can be brought to bear very quickly when something happens. And clearly, what happened was someone in the environment contracted COVID, and that was the start of the concerns that came out since then.
Yeah, just looking at the England programme coming up. I mean, I was just jotting through. I'm not going to select the Ashes team, obviously, but I mean, there might have been 4 or 5 players likely to be in the Ashes who are going to the World T20 in Dubai. Now, are they going to be in a sort of a bubble environment all the way through from the start of that, and obviously time building up to the start of that World T20 as well, right through to the end of the Ashes?
Well, this is what we're trying to understand with respect to conditions in Australia. Now, my understanding is, and there are differing reports, and the differing parts of Australia will have different conditions associated with it. There are parts of Australia which are currently in coming towards the end of snap lockdowns or extended lockdowns, and there are other parts of Australia where life is, to all intents and purposes, normal. We are playing, or due to play, across large parts of Australia where the rules are different, depending on where you go. So those are the complexities of the discussion.
They could change very quickly, though, as well.
And they absolutely could change. Yeah. And, the general situation in Australia is that vaccination rates are improving very quickly. And we hope that by, let's say, middle of November, that they've reached targets which might enable decisions to be made to loosen restrictions and move into the kind of environment we're used to seeing in the UK of late, since middle of August. So those conversations are undergoing. We are working with Cricket Australia, and we have huge sympathy with the Australian government around how they're trying to manage this situation for themselves. So it's about everyone working together to get the right answers to the questions that we're asking and the players are asking of us. Yeah. As I said, no one's being unreasonable here. No. Everyone just needs to get clarity as soon as possible.
And I mean, is a postponement totally off the
I suspect so. Yeah. I think an Ashes series is it's a massive deal for world cricket. It's I put myself in that situation, thinking, what would it take to postpone a home Ashes series? And it's I think that's probably not where we're going to end up. It's an iconic Test series that actually global Test cricket, particularly after today and the disappointment today, fans are going to want to see us playing Test cricket in Australia as soon as possible. So look, let's hope that we can get all of this agreed, and that we can take our best team to Australia and have a great experience over there, and hopefully bring back the Ashes. That's ultimately what we're trying to do.
Well, so I've got to let you go in a second. I mean, just your last thoughts on all of this. I mean, you obviously knew during the night this was going to happen. I mean, you must have been dreading turning up, I guess.
Well, I was hopeful during the night we might find a kind of compromise. That hasn't turned out to be the case. So just really sad for fans who were coming, for everyone involved, people watching on TV around the country and watching the highlights, and it's just not going to be much to watch tonight. It's just a very sad day for everyone involved. There are no winners here. I can tell you that no one's feeling particularly good about this, and it's a sad day for everyone, really.
Just a last question for you, Tom, before you go. This morning, Yorkshire have accepted there was, quotes, no question that Azim Rafiq was the victim of racial harassment and bullying during his first spell at the county. Last summer, Rafiq made serious allegations about his time at the club, forcing Yorkshire to appoint lawyers to launch an investigation with an independent panel also put in place to oversee it. A summary of the panel's findings and recommendations was finally published at 9 o'clock this morning. A statement from the county chairman, Roger Hutton, said there's no question that Azim Rafiq, during his first spell as a player at Yorkshire, was the victim of racial harassment. He's also subsequently the victim of bullying. On behalf of all at Yorkshire, I wish to extend my sincere, profound and unreserved apologies to Azim and to his family. I just wonder, Chief Executive of ECP, what you have to say about that.
Well, it's very sad to hear that, and obviously we've received a copy of that summary, which Yorkshire have published. We'll be working our way through that as a regulator, as not just the governing body, but we'll be working as a regulator, taking a view on what further actions required there. But what is really clear, and it's appropriate now to just underline the Yorkshire County Cricket Club's statement there around an apology to Azim Rafiq and what he has clearly been subjected to at times during his cricket career. And it's that there's no place in this game for racism. We've made that abundantly clear, and sincere and heartfelt apologies to Azim and his family for what they've been put through as a result of
how seriously
that behaviour.
How seriously do you take those comments there?
Well, it's the first time I've heard them, but
right.
I will. I think it's the answer to your question about how seriously do we take this thing. It's the very most serious thing that we can do is provide the environment for people to be able to partake in the game, whatever that means. If it's playing, volunteering, umpiring, scoring, whatever it is. To have a place in the game where you can be yourself. We've been really clear about our position, not just on racism, but across the board on all forms of discrimination. And we need to work very, very hard to ensure that this kind of thing is eradicated through our sport.
Tom, we've had a long day. Thanks for coming to see us.
No problem.
Appreciate it. And again, everybody I know will be devastated at what's happened here. But anyway, thank you for coming to see us.
No problem.
Thank you for talking to us. Tom Harrison is the Chief Executive of the ECB.
You're listening to the TMS podcast from BBC Radio 5 Live.
Victor's back again. What do you make of what Tom Harrison had to say?
Well, I think he was very diplomatic. He doesn't want a row with the Indian Cricket Board, quite clearly. I feel sorry for him. He's obviously probably had no sleep at all. And has been desperate to get this game going forward. Couldn't manage it. But he's not going to condemn Indian players or the BCCI, and with some justification. I certainly have the view that...
I thought he'd put more at the door of the players and at the board, actually.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think that's... And so we have been on tour, and you do hit a ceiling at some point, and you kind of set yourself a target. But usually you sort of gird yourself to the end of that tour. And then if someone had suddenly said, as happened to England way back in the Ray Illingworth tour, 70-71, when they added an extra test suddenly, they were up in arms, but they played it in the end. You kind of mentally attune yourself to get to the end, beyond which you decide that it's impossible to go any further.
Yeah.
But we weren't quite in that situation here, because obviously this test was scheduled. I still can't quite get the distinction between what is the difference between Ravi and co and physio having COVID at the Oval and another physio having COVID prior to. I think but everyone gets ragged towards the end
Absolutely.
of the tour, and we can understand that. We've all been there actually, as players and even as pressmen. You get to the end of that tour and you just sort of. It's very hard to stay mentally tuned in. You have to note, though, that at the Oval, if there was one side that was mentally tuned in, it was India.
Yeah. Can you recreate this in a one-off match next summer, I wonder?
Well, not really, because that's the beauty of a long test series, or long in terms of games, if not time, is that it's like an unfolding drama. It's almost like a soap, and you get to know all the characters, and you get to know Bumrah and Pant and Sharma. You kind of build up a relationship with them, and they have their ups and their downs, and it's a wonderful yo-yo throughout the summer, and by the end of that summer you feel you know these players. It's slightly more difficult when you suddenly fly in one off, and I hope they do conjure a test match, but it won't be quite the same, because it won't have the same context. And your point too about the fact that nowadays a T20 squad and a test match squad is very, very different. So it would mean shipping, not that this would be necessarily a problem, a lot of Indian players over here for a short space of time. It's always interesting nowadays to play against India, because they're one of the best teams, or arguably the best team in the world, along with New Zealand.
Indeed.
Yeah, and of course it's not just the squad, because you could perhaps look and say, well, maybe you do away with the 3 T20s and the 3 ODIs and just replace that with one test match, and then you haven't got that conundrum of having to bring out 2 separate squads. But then, what of those venues who are due to host those 6 different matches as well? There would need to be presumably some sort of compensation for them. You find a venue to stage the one test match, but then they've missed out on white ball games. There's so many moving parts. And what COVID has done, which we're all so well aware of, is that the schedule is so condensed now that there just isn't an easy time to say, well, let's pop in an extra test match because, a side then wants a warm-up game, although, they're becoming fewer and fewer far between now as well, aren't they? And this is, everything is concertinaed. We know how quickly the teams are having to, again, this is all a product of it, isn't it? Leaving here to go straight to the IPL, to go straight to a T20 World Cup, and England then going straight to the Ashes.
We've talked a bit about mental health, and Tom's very strong on mental health, but one of the issues there, I'm sure, again, is going back to this whole inevitable feeling of uncertainty that we all like to know what we're going to be doing next week, next month, and we get uneasy if we haven't a clue. And you've got all of cricket, all the cricketers around the world, struggling to try and work out, what am I going to be doing next month? Will I be in Adelaide or Abergavenny? It is stressful, and it's still a while before we get back to any sort of normality.
Daniel Gidney's here, and Lancashire's chief executive, of course. Daniel, well, commiserations. I mean, I think you've, like Tom Harrison, had a bit of a 12 hours as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. It's been a very challenging period, I think, in 157 years of Lancashire Cricket Club and over 100 years of hosting test matches. This is pretty unprecedented. And firstly, my heart goes out to all of the ticket holders and hospitality buyers who've been so inconvenienced this morning, such late notice, and on behalf of the club, I'm incredibly sorry, and they will get a full refund.
Yeah. What's the impact of something like this? I mean, there must be a lot of people who'll just say, oh, it's COVID again, right, shrug their shoulders and we'll come back next year and on we go. But do you think there's a stronger impact amongst other people? I mean, is there a loss of confidence or something like that?
I think clearly there are financial implications for all of us, but for us, actually, for a proud test venue that's hosted test matches for over 100 years, this is reputational for us. It's very, very challenging that a test match is cancelled here at Emirates Old Trafford. And it's very difficult. At the end of the day, the biggest issue for me is the late notice. Yeah. And I know things weren't able to be helped, but again, I come out to all the ticket holders and hospitality buyers who started travelling. Again, I can only apologise. They will get a full refund. It's very, very difficult, and for me, that's the most challenging aspect. It's, yes, of course, they'll get a refund, but for many people who've lived through the pandemic, the 18 months of real challenges, Freedom Day was only July the 19th, and we haven't had a test match with fans here since the Ashes in 2019. We're now in theory not going to have one until the Ashes in 23. It's really hard. When people are used to buying tickets for test matches to come out in Manchester and support in force that they do, and it's really difficult when you have to let them down like this, and we have, as a game, we have let them down. And again, I'm very sorry to all of those that have been inconvenienced. I
think it was about 8:45 or 8:50 this morning, I think, that the statement came out. I mean, you think that could have been done earlier than that?
I think these things are very difficult. I understand the challenges. These are never easy things to work through. We needed, it had to be done before 9 o'clock because the gates were due to open. Yes. And we needed to communicate to people before that happened. Otherwise, you've got potential safety issues. So I think for us, it was really important that an announcement came out pre-9, and, I was pleased that it did. But effectively, we didn't get final confirmation until just before then. But
you yourselves didn't get final confirmation?
Yeah, we've been in discussions, but I think it wasn't formally cancelled until just before that point.
Yeah. When did you first become alerted to the fact that the game might be cancelled?
Well, I think early this morning there were all sorts of discussions going on. I think it was expressed to us that there were, concerns raised, and those discussions were continuing. So, but we, as I say, we didn't really know that the game was actually going to be off. Yeah. Until just before 9. I
mean, the interesting thing here is that the reason given has been that the Indian camp is uneasy about possible further outbreaks of COVID. I mean, is your club in any way responsible for this testing procedure? I mean, is that part of your remit at all, or is that something else?
No, not at all, Jonathan. I think, and you were here last summer during behind closed doors. We hosted 21 days of international cricket. The process, we all had to go through in terms of safety and COVID. I'm very proud of the efforts and energies of everybody at this club that, I have absolute confidence in all of the staff at Emirates Old Trafford to follow procedures and protocols. I can't comment on the playing side at all.
No. It does sound as if there's not a lot actually that you could have done about it. I mean, you cast a very forlorn figure, and of course you apologise to people, but I'm not sure there's much else you could have done, is there?
No, absolutely not. I think, but that's that's life. That's part of the world we live in. We live in professional sport, and we have a world-class venue, and we've let our customers down. And in any business, an organisation, when you let your customers down, you have to take responsibility for that, and they will get a full refund. But you're right. I look at potential mitigation, and if you look at all of the work that all of our amazing team of staff have gone through to put a test match on, a lot of people don't understand what it takes to put together a 5-day test match. It's unique amongst other sports, which is often an hour and a half, but 5 days of a test match requires an enormous amount of planning. And actually, I've never known in 30 years a labour hospitality market as challenging as this. Everybody has different opportunities, whether they're still on furlough, living with their parents, working as drivers. We've had to work incredibly hard to actually make sure we were fully staffed for this match, and much harder than I can remember us ever having to do. So if you take into fact all of the energy and effort and passion of all of the team here, I feel really sorry for all of my team on site, because they live and breathe test matches. That ultimately is for Lancashire Cricket Club is one of our primary raison d'etres. We've been doing it for years, and we want to continue doing it for years.
Well, you weren't going to be due to doing it next year, of course.
No.
But there's this possibility that's been mooted, because I guess it does suit everyone in a way, with finances and arguments about results and everything else. If this match were to be staged again, the opportunity knocks, does it, next year?
Yes, I think obviously, we'll work through with the ECB whatever happens next. And I think that would be fantastic. It doesn't take away from, sadly, from the people who've been inconvenienced this morning, such late notice. But, as I say, I think we're all in mitigation mode now. Yeah.
Well, Dan, thanks for coming to see us. And, commiserations on behalf of all of us. We're all looking forward to this. It's been a terrific series. But, let's just hope, given what the situation is, that we'll be here next year and we'll have a cracking finale.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And, We've been through many things, all of us, with the pandemic, and we will all work through this. So, as I say, look forward to hosting you again.
Thanks for coming, Daniel. That's Daniel Gidney. He's the Chief Executive up here at Lancashire, of course. So, a final look around the ground. It's like it was last year, sort of deserted as we looked up here, commentating on cricket. Just a few stewards. And that's about it. Some people sitting up there on the hotel balconies. There's a rather sad-looking England flag. I see there pinned to the railings of one of the balconies way up there. That's not far away from our room last year, actually, looking at that. But anyway, it's just thoroughly sad. And another irony is that the weather forecast didn't look very promising for this morning, but the entire time that I've been sitting here chatting to you now, which is an hour, it's 11:30, we haven't had a single spot of rain, and who knows, we might have had a full day's play, but we won't know about that, and it's a terrible shame. And it's just a sad way to say goodbye to this men's summer, but there's much more cricket that we'll still be bringing you, of course. We've got the climax of the county season, there's a T20 Blast finals day, and there's still the England Women's One Day International Series against New Zealand, a thrilling game yesterday, by the way. If you haven't seen that, you can catch up with all of that on iPlayer and so on. And there's so much to bring this winter too, including the IPL. There's the England's men and women in Pakistan. There's a T20 World Cup. There's the Ashes too, and that is so what we're looking forward to so much. Let's hope that goes ahead. There's the Women's Ashes, there's the Women's World Cup. So lots and lots of cricket that we're going to give you. But at a cloudy Old Trafford, it's a sorrowful way for us to say, look, thanks for all your company during this international summer as well. We've thoroughly enjoyed being part of your lives as usual, but for now, we're going to say goodbye.
You're listening to the TMS podcast from BBC Radio 5 Live.
And off we go.
Football is back, and so are the fans.
The noise is absolutely extraordinary. That was spine-tingling.
Hear incredible moments with commentary from BBC Radio 5 Live.
Oh, and what a goal! And it's a day that he will never forget.
And get all the latest from the Football Daily Podcast.
Fans back, goals back, exciting games. It's been a very, very good weekend.
Get your football fix on the BBC Sounds app.
This preseason, take football further with NFL Game Pass.
We make plays and we dominate all night long.
Catch every rookie debut with live out-of-market preseason games.
Welcome to the NFL.
See big names in their new homes.
And here comes one. Julio Jones, touchdown.
Plus, get all the action in 45 minutes or less with condensed game replays.
Oh, my goodness!
Take football further with NFL Game Pass. Go to NFL.com/Game Pass to start your free trial today.